Okay, I've got 6:30 and it looks like we've got a quorum. So we will go ahead and call this meeting to order. Our first item, any additions, deletions, or corrections to our agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Todd, this is Paul. Motion to approve the agenda meeting minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We approved our agenda. You meant agenda, right? Not minutes.
Right. Sorry, agenda.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead and approve our agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Our next item up is the approval of our minutes. Any discussion or corrections? And if not, I'll entertain a motion.
So made.
Okay.
Approve the minutes, please.
Second.
Second, who second? Paul. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of February 9th, 2021. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is remembrance of our former mayor and planning commissioner, Dick Bratton. I thought what I'd do is maybe say a few words and then open it up for the commissioners. If you want to say a few words, and then we'll have a brief moment of silence, and then we'll move on from that. My first interaction with Mr. Bratton, I'm going to call him Mr. Bratton because I think he deserves that respect from me. Was when we were building our house. I found him to be very, very knowledgeable and very helpful. As time went on, his knowledge and of just all things Green Mountain Falls just became really impressive. We helped build one of the trails on Red Devil, and afterwards he had everyone down and to the pantry and bought everyone lunch, and we just had a really good fellowship time there. Speaking of the pantry, my wife and I would go down there occasionally and see Mr. Bratton sitting there. We always enjoyed visiting with him. It was always a good discussion. And one of the things I'm probably going to remember the most is he had this laugh. And once he'd cut in with that laugh, you couldn't hardly help but just kind of crack a smile and start laughing with him. So yeah, that is something that I'm definitely going to remember him by. And quite honestly, my wife and I are really going to miss him, his experience and knowledge of Green Mountain Falls. And with that, I'll open it up to other commission members if you want to say anything.
Hey, Todd, this is Paul. Dick was my up the hill neighbor. I mean, we were, 50 yards apart. And there's a little trail that I take to go up to Catamount Falls. One day I was taking it with the dog, with Mocha, and Dick just waved me over, said, "Hey, young fellow," we hadn't met yet. It was our first summer here. And he waved me over to the porch and made me a martini, and we just sat and listened to a ball game. He was a big baseball fan.
Oh, yeah.
And just as welcoming and kind as he can be. So yeah, I will miss him. Yeah.
It makes me sad every time I think about that loss. He promised us a properly made martini when we got there this summer that we were looking forward to. And I just found him so helpful and so knowledgeable about everything Green Mountain Falls, fire mitigation. He'd already done it on his property, and was so encouraging and knowledgeable for the rest of us who were trying to learn about this. It was such a shock, and it's still hard to get my head around that he's not going to be there with that martini when we come this summer.
Hey, Todd, I attempted to call Dick Bratton, Mr. Bratton one time, and he insisted that I always called him Dick. He didn't want to have any formality like that. And I can say that if it wasn't for Dick Bratton, I wouldn't be on this planning commission. He encouraged me to be involved in the town. Of course, I could never be as involved as he was. And he was a foundational member of this town, and he will be sorely missed.
Well, if there's no other comments, we'll just have a few moments of silence here in memory of Mr. Dick Bratton. Okay, Godspeed, Dick. We're really going to miss you. Okay, moving on. Item number 5, members of the public who are wishing to comment. I believe we have a couple, Julia.
Yes, the first person to, I'm not sure if Mr. Gafford is here. His item was put to public testimony and correspondence, but I don't see him. However, Mr. Michael Butts also asked to give testimony, and I do see him here. So I can unmute.
Okay. Michael, you're on. We're not hearing you. Yeah, you're showing us unmuted, but we're not getting audio. Give him a second here.
It looks like Mr. Butts may have restarted a computer or shut down Zoom.
Okay. We can go on and do item 6 and come back. Because I think he was wanting to talk, and without having the other person with Clay not present, I think we can probably go ahead and then proceed on to item number 6, and then when he gets back on after item 6, we can jump back if that's okay with everyone. Okay, let's do that. Let's go ahead and give him a chance to get clocked back in. And we'll go ahead with item number 6. We'll return to item 5 when he's present. Resolution 2021-10, Memorial Bench at Gazebo Lake Park. Donation of a memorial bench from the Fox family. And we'll do our staff report first, and then we'll go to the applicants, and then we'll go and see if any commissioners have any questions or comments. And then we'll proceed on from there.
Okay, Zach, do you mind sharing the screen? Can you, Mr. Butts is back, it looks like. Can you share screen, please, so that we can see the proposal? And this is a memorial bench. The following is outlined briefly in a staff report. It's a relatively short staff report to include the donation and dedication of a memorial bench in the park. The town attorney did draft a resolution, but was unable to deliver it until this morning. I'm happy to pull that up. It's a resolution regarding the memorial bench, but it didn't make it into the packet. So nevertheless, the Planning Commission can make a recommendation to the board regarding the project. It is Zach, that's testimony. If you'll keep scrolling. And Zach will pull up the proposal that you all have in your packet. And Ms. Fox, and actually Mr. and Mrs. Fox are here to answer any questions. I'm happy to answer any questions as well. This is a donation, so commissioners, the recommendation would be to the Board of Trustees on the proposal.
Okay. Larry, would you like to say anything additional to this?
Hang on, Mr. Fox, you're muted.
Oh,
There you go.
Now you're on.
all right. Yes, we moved to Green Mountain Falls in 1973, up at the end of Belvedere. And Chad grew up there, went to Ute Pass Elementary, Manitou High School, and then on to the University of Colorado, where he graduated 4 different times. So he was a definite Colorado person. He had a PhD in aerospace engineering and did research for University of Colorado, and they sent him to Pasadena, California, to work in the Jet Propulsion Laboratory for a short period of time. The entire time he was out there, when I called him, or the first time I called him, I said, "Wow, what's it like being in Pasadena? What a cool place." And he said, "It's not Colorado. I can't wait to get back." That was Chad's feeling about Colorado. And Green Mountain Falls was his home. That's where he learned to love the mountains. He was an avid hiker, skier, mountain biker, and died very unexpectedly of a brainstem stroke, is what they called it. And we wanted to do something as a memorial to him and an enhancement to the town of Green Mountain Falls. And that's where we came up with the idea of a rather uniquely designed bench. It would be made out of granite by a company in Grand Junction. This is a rendition of it. It won't be, the bench itself won't be quite as massive as that one. That's 10 inches thick, and I requested it to be 6 inches thick. And the base, those 2 base pieces are about 18 inches, or about 20 inches thick wide, and I asked them to make them about 10 inches. So it's not quite so heavy looking. And in addition to that, we would like to say something on the upright stone piece. Chad was a bit of a poet also. And he has some lines of verse that I think would be appropriate for our small little town of Green Mountain Falls in memory of him. Lena, would you like to say something?
You basically said, I still live there, and this was his home, and I would just like to donate this memorial bench to the town for everybody to enjoy in an honor and memory of him. He was living at Aspen at the time of his death. He was a member of Mountain Rescue Aspen, skied every day, And just, this is just so it's totally unexpected. It will be a year on March 26th. This will be the first year anniversary of his death. And of course, we could not do a service or anything last summer because of the pandemic. And so this is what we would like to do to honor him and to give something back to the town that has given us a lot. And we've enjoyed this town. It's my home and it'll always be my home, and his too. And thank you, Julia, for all you have done to help instigate and get this project going for us. I greatly appreciate all you have done.
I might finish by saying, when we talked about doing something and decided upon this idea and to put it around the park, around the lake, that's where Chad first learned to ice skate. He was an avid winter sports person. He loved the cold. That's all. Thank you for considering our proposal.
Well, first, let me say we're very, very sorry for your loss. It's never easy losing a loved one. So with that, I'll ask the commissioners if they have any more questions or comments. And if not, we'll go ahead and entertain a motion. And the motion would basically be to forward the resolution, recommend approval and forward the resolution to the Board of Trustees.
Thank you.
This is Gregory.
Hi, Greg.
I'd just like to thank you for doing that. And I like to see things in this town that add history and meaning. And this certainly fits that bill.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Fox, my name's Sean Ives. Chad was a contemporary of my younger brother. I also grew up in Green Mountain Falls,
Yes.
and I remember him well. And I have very fond memories of him. And I was very sad to hear his passing.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we forward this to the Board of Trustees for approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we forward this resolution to the Board of Trustees, recommending approval of it. All in favor, say aye.
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 You have any opposed? I didn't think so. Okay, and thank Mr. and Mrs. Fox. Thank you very much for doing this for the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Planning Commission, and again, Julia, for all your support and help in getting this remembrance for us and for the town. So thank you very much. We greatly appreciate this.
And Julia, I thought I saw Michael come back on. Can we go back to maybe item 5 with their public comment?
Oh, come on.
Oh, I thought I heard.
Now it is.
Okay.
Yeah, just get close to your microphone.
You need a good technical thing. Just turn it off and turn it back on. So, first of all, to Lana and Larry, condolences. You guys, sorry to hear about your son. So, I joined the Planning Commission meeting last month, and you guys approved a grading permit based on designs and pending approval of a third-party engineer. The third-party engineer has come back and requested an erosion control plan. And my apologies to the town, but I didn't prep beforehand last meeting. And looking at the codes and the application, it looks like a waiver could be granted, but I didn't do my due diligence and I never requested that. The third-party engineer has requested that as part of their normal course of doing business. but I'm coming before y'all today to request that waiver. This project, it's less than 1/10 of an acre, and it's going to be fully contained within the property. It's not going to impede on any of the neighbors. Everything's going to be contained with the lot. And this in itself will save several $1,000s in not having to go through this process with extra engineering and surveying work that we require.
You're muted, Todd.
Michael, if we could have you state your name and your address. I forgot to have people do that earlier.
10860 Forest RA Street.
Did that come through, Julia? Okay. I was having trouble hearing, but Julia's shaking her head yes, so thank you. Michael, unfortunately, that's not on our agenda for any action. It's a public, for us to take any action on something, it has to be on our agenda. We have to actually post it. It has to and we have to go through that process. I apologize, but that's something, if we take formal action on, we're pretty much required to get an agenda that's posted in the public, on the public forum, so many days or so many, actually 24 hours, I think is the minimum ahead of time. That's something we really can't take action on. If that's something you would like for us to take action on, we would have to probably get it on a future meeting and noticed properly. But I will also tell you that we're pretty much sending everything that touches erosion and grading control to the third-party engineer. If there's issues with what you think the engineer is doing, I would actually encourage you to maybe get with town staff and the engineer and to see if some of those can be worked through. I don't know, maybe they can, maybe they can't. As far as I know, no one on the planning commission has a professional engineering license. And I think in the state of Colorado, you almost have to have a PE to be able to say yay or nay on any kind of, well, especially public works, but anything that would actually include any kind of approvals, I think, from a governing body as well. So yeah, unfortunately, it's not something we can actually act on today because it has to get noticed and we have to actually put it in the agenda and go from there. And Julia, if I've said anything wrong, please correct me.
In response to Chair Dixon's comments, the town manager and I are happy to work with the town engineer and the applicant if there is, if we can come to a decision or come to a conclusion that will address the concerns of the engineer, expedite this approval. These third-party engineering time, these lapses have been a cause for concern, and I appreciate the 1 acre concern for the Clean Water Act and PDES permits. I'm happy to work with the applicant.
Is it that y'all have approved everything on the last time? Everything now administrative. So Julia, if administratively, if we can get everything done this week, next week, whatever, it may not need to go to the April meeting.
Mike, I think if you're wanting to actually formally request a waiver, that would have to wait until April meeting. And Julia, am I correct on that? Just shake your head yes if I am.
The commission and the board have taken action on this. If there are administrative things we can do, I can do to work with the applicant and the engineer to make sure that we have code compliance and public health and safety covered. A waiver will likely take longer than the coordination process.
Yeah,
I'm,
what I'm asking, in order for us to actually go back and actually do a waiver, we would have to basically have that noticed in an agenda, and then we'd have to approve that. And then it would have to go on to the Board of Trustees again. Am I correct?
If you would like to waive an ECP, that
Yeah.
would be correct.
Yeah. So unfortunately, it's kind of taking steps backwards from what's already been done.
If a third party changed their decision and decided that they weren't going to request that, would that be, that, that would be within the purview based on, because y'all approved everything. I'm looking at my own notes. Upon approval of the third party engineer.
Right. Like say, if there's, say the engineers come up with something and you're thinking, oh my gosh, is that really what we have to do? And you get with the engineer and he kind of goes, well, maybe not, and, but backs off. Well, then, okay, the whole approval process is based upon getting the approval from the town engineer, the engineer we use for the town. And once that's done, then as far as I know, everything can proceed on from them once we have and I believe we have all the BOT approvals on that now. So, yeah, I would, for me personally, I would recommend actually trying to work with the engineer and the staff to try to work through things rather than trying to take steps back and trying to go through a waiver. But that's just me. You're free to do whatever you think is necessary.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, please do.
Being that we have approved this based on conditions, and if those conditions are met, this wouldn't need to come before us again. Just need to go to the Board of Trustees.
I don't even think it needs to go to the Board of Trustees. I think it's been all approved based
Okay.
upon,
Right, because we're grading approval, so.
it's basically once the
And
engineer.
so what I'm suggesting is that if staff and the engineer come to an agreement, they can just move forward. And if they don't, then you're going to have to comply with the engineer.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, since we're back on item 5, did we ever have, did Clay ever join us? I don't see him on screen. He was another one that indicated he might want to talk. If not, we will move on to item number 7, grading and erosion control plan for the Upper Turret Trail at 10400 El Paso Avenue. And we'll start off as usual with our staff report.
Okay. And I believe Zach, if he can pull up the report, and actually probably the site plans would be the most useful thing. This is, Zach and I are presenting this together because this is being reviewed individually for the development of the Terrell Trail, as you see in the staff report, for code compliance. But as you are also well aware from the last few months, this is a component of the overall annexation concept plan. The trail will sit in the public lands designated zoning district between the public restrooms and the proposed sky space art installation. Zach Trainer, who is driving the machine right now, saved me during a very tight deadline and created this staff report and did a fantastic job capturing the issues. Basically also, as many have been recently, pointing to third-party engineering review. The applicant, Mr. Jesse Stroop, is here to answer questions, and Zach and I are here to help answer anything that the commission is unsure about.
Okay, Jesse, we usually give applicants an opportunity to speak next. Is there anything you'd like to add? He's still muted. Jesse, you're muted.
All of that to say that I think you've all seen this enough times that I probably don't need to comment on it.
Okay. Do we have any questions or comments from the commission?
Yes, this is Gregory. I've seen it enough to where I don't need to comment.
Okay. If there's no other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion. And this would be a recommend approval to the Board of Trustees. And if we go with the staff report, there's conditions.
I can make a motion that we approve GRA 2021-03 and recommend it to the Board of Trustees.
Do we hear a second?
I'll second.
Who was that? Who did that?
Sean,
Been moved and seconded that we submit this on to the Board of Trustees, recommending approval based upon the conditions that the staff has identified. Correct? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any opposed? Okay, that one passes. Okay, the next one, I think I'd like to break this next one up into kind of two pieces. The architectural plan review and then the grading and erosion control plan. Julie, I think that might have been kind of the way it was broken out in our staff report, but I'll let you go ahead with the staff report on this one.
Okay. So this is the Sky Space art installation that is being reviewed for architectural plan review per section 16705. It is a little bit more, it's a little unusual because of the public lands designation that doesn't have a minimum development standards, which would be setbacks, site restrictions, minimum lot size. The buildings is, like I said, sited on public lands. The applicant and the board did finalize a contract for during the annexation agreement. This is not any new news to you. So there are in the annexation agreement included in your packet, there are more specific details on the standards that we have and will apply to the applicant. The grading separate from the architectural plan review. We are recommending, of course, go to third-party engineering. Those are the two items, architectural plan review and grading for Sky Space art installation. And Chair Dixon, if you did want to split them up, architectural plan review would be an approval by the Planning Commission, and architecture and the grading
Grading's a recommend.
is a recommendation.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'd like to go ahead and split up each one of those independently. Jesse, do you have anything to add?
Well, I would say from the get-go, we worked closely with the artists to make sure that that architecturally this would fit into the space and be appropriate for Green Mountain Falls. So I would be surprised if you are interested if you found it to not meet architectural review.
Yeah.
And
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
well, if you're doing two separate, then I'll speak again about grading.
Okay. Yeah. The only thing I noticed, and this is really kind of down the rabbit hole and kind of off the subject, is I noticed that it looks like we have stone flooring being put in, and just to kind of remember this, there's going to be a trail going up to this, and they may be tracking through. And something you may want to keep in mind is the possibility of slip hazards. That's the only thing I noticed. So,
yeah, I'll say that we've had many conversations about that, and the red granite is a burnished stone that is just not smooth.
okay, good deal. Commissioners, any further questions or comments? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the architectural plan.
This is Gregory. I'll make a motion that we approve the architectural plan as submitted.
I'll second.
Okay, Sean, second. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the architectural plan. All in favor, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the grading plan, GRA 2021-03. And Joe, you had some recommendations on this, I believe. Basically just that it goes to the town engineer for the grading and erosion control. Jesse, did you want to have any further comment on the grading and erosion control?
Just specifically, I wanted to make the commission aware that the turnaround time thus far with the third-party engineer has been over 5 weeks for initial review. And I certainly understand the need for that review. A pass-through expense, I'm paying for engineering twice, and then having to wait 5 to 6 weeks to have that initial review is frustrating. I'm sure Michael Butts probably had the same experience. Not to say that I totally agree with the condition. Just wanted to make you aware.
I had the same thing when we built our place. It was a several week delay getting it through the engineer. And I even had discussions with the engineer. So there were some things he was asking for that I kind of questioned, and yeah, we came to a good resolution on it. So commissioners, are there any other questions or comments you'd like to make? And again, if not, I will.
So Todd, the motion that we're making is that we approve this grading plan with the third-party engineering, with that condition.
The staff recommendation is to go ahead and send it to the third-party engineer for grading and erosion control. That's something that's been fairly consistent with us, and yeah, it is a long lead time item. That's something that, going forward, when we look at our land use codes, we may want to explore any kind of possibilities if there's some things that we can do either administratively or whatnot. But yeah, the staff report right now is recommending sending it to third-party engineer. So, like I say, I'm still holding for the motion.
Well, I'll make a motion that we follow on what the staff has recommended.
I'll second.
Sean has seconded. Been moved and seconded that we send the GRA 2021-03 grading and erosion control plan for the sky space. Recommend approval to the Board of Trustees. All in favor, vote aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Todd, before we move on, can I ask a question of our Julia? I'm looking for a copy of the standard boilerplate agreement we use with the engineer when we do grading plan reviews. Could you send me a copy of that?
I will email you for clarification on what you're looking for. Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, our next item of business is our 2021 Zoning and Land Use Code Amendment with a kickoff presentation by Ms. Williams. Ms. Williams on.
Tina, are you able to unmute?
Yes, sorry about that. It's only been a year with these meetings. Hi, everyone. It's so great meeting you virtually. I very much wish we were meeting in person, but I'm hopeful that hopefully in a few months we'll be able to meet and discuss about our land use code rewrite. I know it's something that you as a town have been looking forward to for some time. And Julia speaks very highly of you as a group, so I'm excited to work with you as the Planning Commission. I want to thank Julia and Zach Trainer for all their helps thus far. And we have a short PowerPoint presentation to kind of explain what this is going to look like. And then hopefully, before I start, I want to explain for questions. If it would be good if you put them in the chat box, and then periodically I'll ask Julia if there are questions, so we can kind of, address them as it goes. So we're just thankful for DOLA and also the Kirkpatrick Family Fund for a generous support making this whole project possible. So I want to make sure we said that. So tonight we just want to go over again our goals. This simply begins the conversation. It's a brief summary of the initial overview of the land use code and the plan for next steps, which includes community engagement, which is the most important part, which will be incorporated in each step of this rewrite project. So again, we've only just begun. Cue Karen Carpenter. I hope that song is in your head all night. It was for all of us for a few days. So our main project, the project is the land use code rewrite. What are the goals? What we heard is make it easier to do the right thing. That's probably the most important thing in the land use code right now, to simplify. Other goals are implementing your community goals that are identified in your comp plan, which is very recently, only about a year ago. Make it more user-friendly. And that means streamlined, accessible, and we'll explain that more. And then development review and approval process, more consistent, understandable. I think we just spoke to that recently, even tonight, and probably some of your most recent meetings is, it goes back to making it easier to do the right thing, but just to understand what is necessary, streamline it, make it very organized and simple and straightforward. So I thought this would help. The black arrow is we are here right now. So we just started again, the code diagnosis. So what that means is I and Julia and also Zach, we looked at the land use code, just made simple diagnosis, which will explain what that means. And again, that's just the start. Then we're going to go through all these phases. And we thought it was helpful. If you look at the black arrow underneath, it shows the timeline. So right now we're in late winter. By the spring, we'll go through specific dates. We're going to have a presentation of an annotated outline, which we'll explain. And then the actual drafting of the code, I thought it made sense to divide that into 3 different sections: administration and procedures, the districts and uses, and then development standards and other town goals. I think that keeps everyone focused, all of us. So kind of grouping it, that's not going to be the sections in the code, but that's the 3, I would say, general areas, and that we could break it into. And then the final phase is very quick. That's just the public hearing that you'll have. But if you see, we'll have community engagement in each portion. And our goal is late autumn to have that final land use code adopted. So it is an aggressive timeline, but I think it's a very realistic timeline if everyone is on board with the community engagement and also the different meetings that we'll have to make sure that what we see in the code correlates with what you as a town and your individual needs want to see. So we have 2 general things that we'll talk about tonight, just make it simplified. It's our general code diagnosis, again, what we saw looking at it. And then what is our plan for community engagement and public participation? That's the most important part. I'm never going to pretend to tell you what Green Mountain Falls needs or wants, or what you as a community and leaders in planning and zoning want to see. that's important for me to merge the experience that I have in drafting these different types of codes and representing towns and cities and also applicants and developers. That's my experience, and merging that with what your community wants, what you've seen. You've volunteered for this board for a while, so what you've seen could work better, that sort of thing. That's important. And then also what the general community wants to see. Merging those two things, what the whole project will look like. And today is just to go over that, those general steps. Are there any questions yet? Probably not. So what is a code diagnosis? Just words until we explain. It's more of a 30,000 foot view, general summary of what, again, we saw looking at this whole document. The document is the land use code chapters 16, 17, 18 in your code regarding zoning, subdivision, and building regulations. So it's larger universal issues that we saw and topics to address to start the conversation. And then a reminder, I don't really say it as a reminder, but just, the next step is what we call an annotated outline. That's just something a term that I use. It's a next deliverable from us. So what that means is an outline for consolidating, reforming the regulations. And the outline also helps guide the actual code drafting. So it's the next step that we will present to you as Planning Commission after we have some community engagement, which will explain what that will look like. It's easier to kind of point it out to you in an outline versus drafting the code itself and then changing it. So that's what that means when we say annotated outline. And again, presented after initial community engagement, which will happen after this meeting. So throughout the next few steps of this project, we'll be asking ourselves, staff, you as Planning Commission, and more importantly, the community, what regulations do you immediately think need improvement? What maybe needs a complete overhaul, just start from scratch or delete, remove, change, that sort of thing. What's actually working well? I'm sure there are things that are working well in your code. We're not going to totally burn and redo. It's more, what parts are we keeping? What part worked for your town? What parts don't work? What parts maybe that I'll see that I recommend changing, seeing with you, does that work? That sort of thing. General themes to implement in a comprehensive manner, and we'll go into what that means. And potential solutions and options. That's just the whole process, what we'll be asking ourselves as we look at this. And when I say ourselves, again, not just me, you, this is the community, everybody will look at it holistically. And which topics cannot be addressed in a land use code. So some of the items, and we'll talk about this way later on, but some of the items maybe in the comp plan or that are important are not best served in a land use code. Land use code can't solve all our problems, but it can do a lot. And we will make sure that you're going, at the end of this whole project, you're going to have something that works for you procedurally, legally, makes sense from a planning technical standpoint, and also makes sense for your community. And then we still can address knowing what's important to you. Generally, even if it cannot be specifically regulated in a land use code, we still have that overarching knowledge. And that way we can know in certain ways we look at the framework of certain topics, we can kind of take that into consideration. And before I start, I think Steve, we have a question. Are we going to have engineering review through the process? That is a good question. We will definitely, that's very important. As I was looking through even today to prepare just my notes for this actual discussion, I thought of that. There are some technical things that we definitely want to make sure we run by engineering, because we've been working very closely with the planning staff, but writing that down just to make sure, but yes. So when we originally looked at your land use code, we had 6 general recommendations that are just, again, overarching, that will help guide, and then of course we'll take more into consideration. So let's make the code more user-friendly, easier to understand. That would help. Update your development review procedures. update zoning and overlay districts, revise your use regulations, and improve development standards or look at development standards and see what you want to do. And then address certain of your goals that you identified in your comp plan. So now we'll break it apart, those 6 things, just so you understand what we're talking about. So the first thing is make the code more user-friendly and easier to understand. So again, this talks to make it easier to do the right thing. How can we do that? How can we make a code more user-friendly? We could provide clarity and predictability to anyone who's reading it, or most readers. Make it less difficult to use, easier to understand, more organized. Standardize the structure so it's simple where you would look for certain topics. And then reorganize it so again, it's easier to understand where you're finding items or topics. And relocate policies, submittal requirements, development standards. A lot of times that can be removed from a code and put into an administrative manual, or the code could refer to that manual. And the reason for that is because these are technical requirements at an administrative or staff level. And you shouldn't want to, especially with a small town with limited resources, you don't want to have to amend your code via an ordinance every time you want to make changes. For certain technical things, it makes sense, and other codes have to remove to a manual, and your planning staff recommended that as well. And again, make it easier to do the right thing. I like that. I think that's Chair Dixon who termed that, so I don't want to take credit. So the second general recommendation, again, we had 6 that we just saw, is development review procedures. So this is identifying types and uses that require a public hearing. It's really basically asking the question of which review procedures should always go through a public process, which is in front of you and then your board of trustees, or what can really be approved administratively to simplify, standardize the review procedure is probably the most important. And you will have a say in what that means. Certain things, if it's always going to be the same technical requirements, maybe you put that into the code and then you allow the administrative process to deal with. And certain applications, you're going to say, no, our town wants a public process, public input, public comment. And we've heard that so far the approval process, it could be more predictable, less confusing. That would be important for your review procedures. And we've heard that current standards are difficult to enforce, comply consistently. Most people want to comply, but if it's not clear how or when you even apply to get reviewed or submit an application, then how can you comply, and how could things be consistent with the town and within a town? So again, our goal for each review procedure is to look at it, evaluate thresholds for the various types of review. It'll be more clear in the code, common review procedures, and clarify those procedures. So every part of the code that speaks to different types of procedures will be all, organized in one place or clear and follow the same steps or guidelines. Even if those are different within each one, at least it's consistent where you look. And establish objective criteria. As a lawyer, I always think about that because it's important that you're relying on something objective, something clear, because you want to make sure that there's not only there's a predictability for the property owner, but that it's fair and applied consistently to all the property owners in the same circumstances. That's very important, and it reduces your liability. So the third recommendation we saw is updating zoning and overlay districts. So the first thing is, we didn't even see it. You called for it in your comp plan. It designated future uses. I think it was 4.2 of your comp plan. And it listed different types of uses that we would maybe look into seeing if those would be new zoning districts or somehow applied to the current zoning districts. So those ones that were identified were single, 2-family residential, multifamily residential, business, public and semi-public, parks, open space. Again, these could all be zoning districts. Then we look into overlay zones. Right now, your town only has one overlay zone, and that's the hillside overlay zone. We'll see, is it working for the town? And then there are other overlay zones that I know are important from reading your comp plan so far, and that is historic preservation for your historic areas and your downtown commercial core. So those are overlay districts. You have a zoning district and then you have an overlay district that would maybe just be a few blocks with certain added provisions that you as a community want to make sure that you're maintaining those, either those elements or to attract more commercial business, or that sort of thing. So that's the purpose of an overlay, and we'll see how people feel about that. It does look like it's necessary from talking to you, some of the planning staff, and also reading your comp plan. So first we talk about zoning districts, then we talk about use regulations. I would like to see you have a schedule of uses in your code and make it simplified. So it's a lot of land use codes have a chart, and it has the district of, each zoning district, and then what is permitted, not permitted, and conditionally permitted. Right now, you just have a few permitted uses listed under each district in the text of your code. It would be much more simple and easier for people to do the right thing and to also know what their property is, allows or for development if you had that type of chart. So when we do that, I'll help organize that chart, but when we plug it in, what's permitted, what's not permitted, what's conditionally permitted, it's more about asking what your community needs. What do you like about your community that you want to make sure those uses are allowed? And what uses perhaps you want to make sure are conditional or special use to make sure they're compliant with the neighborhood around that property. So that's what I just have the chart, like we said. And then I'll make simple what is allowed and what's not allowed in those zone districts. So a fifth recommendation we have is to improve or look at development standards. What does your town want? So ideas that you have for development standards is maybe you protect certain historic areas by having certain standards for those areas. We heard in the comp plan, consider more walkable access and site design standards. So for example, if there's a residential development, you require that they connect to trails and that sort of thing. Connectivity of street and trails. And consider, do you have relaxed standards? So you have increased development standards for maybe your historic areas, and then maybe you have relaxed standards in certain instances for infill or for certain type of housing that you're looking to attract. These are ideas, again, I'm not gonna tell you what to do, but do you want landscaping standards in certain new developments? Do you want to speak about parking areas, streets, trees, trees on the streets, screening, up lighting standards? We heard about dark sky, downcast lights. Are these things that your town wants to look into? Some of you have spoken to Zach already and spoke to, do we want to look at exterior facade, painting, siding, roof, deck, fence designs? Again, there's sometimes when we talk about this gets communities nervous. This is not something that you have to do. This is more, is this something that the community wants, or maybe in certain developments? And to that point, I highly recommend the latter, but if you determine if you want development and design standards applied broadly to the whole town, or you're tailoring it to a use or a context. Maybe you have any standards in most communities, and you only certain either new development or maybe the downtown area, you have these different kinds of development standards. So that's what we mean when we say improve. We mean look at them and see if they're working, and what do you want to add. So finally, it's a final general recommendation. Of course, there'll be a lot more, is your community specific goals that you've identified in your comp plan. And I like this quote that you wanted to see an appropriately sized, safe community home to a residential, commercial, recreational, cultural use. How do we make that happen? Through the land use code. And that can be an overarching theme as we look into all of these different items. So what I read in your comp plan was that people wanted to make the town more walkable and bikeable. That's a word. Attract certain commercial growth in certain areas. So you can do that through a land use code. You can impact that in certain manners. You spoke about commercial development on the east side of Highway 24 in the comp plan. So how do we look at that? Preserve historic scenic downtown was very important. A lot of my clients have that historic downtown, and I have a lot of experience in helping giving options as to how we protect districts, those areas, and also attracting the commercial growth. There's ways to do both in those districts. We heard about diverse housing types in the comp plan because in Green Mountain Falls, you have unique atypical lot sizes and shapes. Tiny homes is a big theme in the comp plan, looking at that. ADUs, accessory dwelling units, perhaps there's an aging population where you want to either have move in with in-laws or adult in-laws, or have the ability to, in certain districts, use your property that way, where you can either build a separate unit in your home and keep the family together intact. And that's something that a lot of communities are looking at. So that perhaps that's something that you want to as well. So that's what we mean by diverse housing types. This is so important, the community engagement and public participation. So what is our overall approach? Just generally, leverage local expertise that's already here in the town, that's been thinking about this for probably years and decades. That's the most important thing. Again, you guys are the experts in your community. Build and expand on existing community participation processes. So I know you've had different initiatives, including the comp plan, but other different plans that you've done where there's been stakeholders and groups of people who are interested in the community. We have those, build upon what has worked in the past, in the recent past, and expand on that to make sure that anyone who wants to be included in this process it's your town, and we want to make sure that we are engaging as many people as possible. And then offer meaningful input and choices. So how we're going to present this is, these are a few options that we recommend you look at or that have worked in other communities. What do you think? And input answers to your questions and vice versa on those different options. The next two slides, I'm going to hand over to Zachary Trainer. He's our planning intern, and we're excited for him to go into what he's prepared for this the most important part of this process.
All right, thanks. So we're really starting off this process with two questions. And the first one is, who do we want to reach with our community engagement? And what type of feedback do we want? We want to make sure that we're, in our survey that we're going to talk about here in a second, that we're identifying really intentional questions that we want to get feedback from. So engagement activities, we're going to kick that off April 1st with a newsletter, which will include survey and polling, which we'll talk about here in a second, and then ongoing discussions with the community. So to that end, we brainstormed some survey questions here. If there are other ideas out there, we're definitely happy to hear them. Again, we want to be intentional in the type of feedback that we are getting. So just brainstorming and looking at what other municipalities have done. Sample questions might include, what is your association with Green Mountain Falls? Which of the following permits have you applied for? And then we'll have a list there. And then this was kind of a multiple choice question, kind of thinking about, well, what would I want to see as a citizen or a developer in the land use code rewrite here? So what are the following items that you'd like to see? So explain when our permit is needed more clearly, standards presented in a table form rather than long written descriptions. I know that helps me out a lot with information. A zoning code user guide, less technical jargon and more plain English, more graphics, illustrations, diagrams, improved table of contents and index, more definitions, more intuitive organization, and then kind of leaving that open for other feedback as well. And then just trying to identify, again, going back to what has worked and what has not worked or been problematic or challenging. So what areas of the land use code have you found problematic? If you could make one big change to it, what would it be and why? I think that would be really helpful to find out as well. But if there's kind of other questions that other people would like to get data on, I'm definitely open to hearing those as well.
So next steps, we just wanted to make sure you mark your calendars for what Zach spoke to. And that's, the next steps are initial outreach and engagement to gauge whether what we just said, what we saw, what we analyzed, what we recommend, do they comport with the expectations of the project and the needs of the community? And again, this is a very general overarching 30,000 foot view, but I think it starts the conversation and kind of sees if we're on, if we're on the same line of thinking, and then which ways we need to go as it relates to the specific community, your specific community. And then again, though, that annotated outline is going to be coming up. Well, we'll go over the dates. So April 1st, Zach and Julia are going to put out the newsletter with a survey for anyone who signed up for that newsletter. So that'll open up on April 1st, and then they'll be given, I think, 3 weeks to respond, and then we'll look at everything. Then we'll have a community input meeting. We'll spread the word and invite anybody that wants to attend, just for general. They'll have a survey. They'll be starting to think, and we'll get all that input on April 27th, and then May 11th is coming back to you as a planning commission, while I'll present this annotated outline, which I spoke to as to how we're going to organize these amendments. Again, starting the process, and after that, we'll be actually drafting that code, the code rewrite. So, I have one. I have a question. How many someone wrote, how many do you have signed up for the newsletter? I don't know if we know that right now, but if Julia knows, she'll let us know.
How do you do it?
Ms. Ann Esch is signed up for the newsletter. Ms. Ann Esch is signed up for everything. The newsletter will go online, and then all the boards and commissions will receive, it'll be a large email with a link to the newsletter, because it will be online. There will be a massive email blast. And we will also establish a mailing list for anyone who wants to receive materials for the land use code. Zach, do you have anything else on that? I know we've talked about this a little, and we'll iron it out.
Yeah, we're also going to launch a page on the website that'll also have that newsletter posted as well. So that'll be going up tomorrow.
That's great. And the page will also include our any presentations we have or any written material. So if someone comes in late, I hear that Green Mountain Falls, my town is doing this rewrite, then they could look at that. Any more questions or original or just knee-jerk reactions or input that you might have?
Hey, Nina, this is Todd, and I've actually done kind of quite a bit of this type of
activity. Oh, good. That's really good to know.
What the Federal Aviation Administration, of course,
right.
Is different.
Right.
But what I'm wondering, usually what we started off with was we got together and did a brainstorming session. There were quite a few questions in the initial part of the presentation material, and we would actually get together as a group, and it would probably be, I'm guessing, this group, rather than a much larger group, because then things can get pretty unwieldy. But I'm kind of wondering if we shouldn't, between now and April 1st, get together and maybe do a brainstorming session just amongst the Planning Commission to identify those, and maybe address some of those items you had earlier in your presentation. And the way I was used to doing was old school. We got we got basically a bunch of yellow stickies.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, you've seen that.
I know, we're not in person.
Yeah. That's how we did. We did old school, and then we did groupings, and we kind of went from there. Based upon my experience with doing other types of brainstorming activities, there's a lot that we could brainstorm.
Yes.
And it could actually go into multiple type of sessions. It's not unusual for some of these things to last just on a simple grouping 2 or 3 hours. So that's something I'm going to recommend to the Planning Commission and to you, that we actually have a special meeting between now and the 1st of April to actually do some brainstorming on some of those initial items you had in your presentation.
Yeah, so I would, that's a great idea. And I'm just a logistic person. Julia, does that work on your next, I know you guys have like a date set aside for another meeting. Would that work for the 23rd, or do you have something scheduled on that date already?
So is that for an agendized planning commission meeting, Chair Dixon?
Well, we would need to probably work session. We need to post it for the open meetings, but to have that brainstorming session that Chair Dixon is speaking to.
Yeah, I would like to work with the chair and any of the planning commissioners. We also navigating deadlines, but I guess this is where we decide these things. So if the commission wants to hold a meeting on the alternative Tuesday, the 23rd, or a work session, I'm open to that.
That would be my suggestion.
Going a little off the cuff, sorry.
Yeah.
No, say, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to, since we have everyone here, yeah. And since it's a short time frame, and then I will, I'll ask Julia for Chair Dixon's contact information, just so I could chat with you before that meeting to make sure we, work together on that. I think that's a good idea. We're trying our best with, the current realities. And I agree with the way you're explaining how, you see these different brainstorming sessions work. And that might be more productive to have that before, again, the larger community input meeting, because that's going to be open out to everybody, and which is important, but it'll also help to tailor that discussion.
Yeah. Commissioners' thoughts on this?
Oh, I think we need more participation time between us as a board to talk about these kinds of issues, provided we come there planning to talk about it and have done some preparation for it.
I agree, Todd and Gregory. I think that it would be very helpful for this group to spend a little bit of time, because we've seen all the frustrations and the issues and that sort of thing. And I think it'd be a good idea for us to sort of talk about that ahead of time. And I think that can maybe give some structure to the larger community discussion.
So
Commissioners,
sounds like we're maybe targeting March 23rd for maybe a special meeting, a work, what do you call it, a workshop or whatever?
Work session.
Work session. And Julia, I'm kind of
Todd, not to be a killjoy, this is Paul. Unfortunately, I have travel plans that week, so with regrets, I won't be available.
Okay. If we have material ahead of time, we might be able to, try to get your input before you head out. If not, we'll try to do as best we can without you. What was I going to say? Julia, we may want to extend an invitation to this might be something where the Board of Trustees may want to be on as well. If nothing else, observe or participate. I'd be open to either one.
So oh, sorry, Julia.
No, Nina, please. I'm
just so I could be prepared as to how you see this a specific thing going, especially before the community input and then all the next steps. Is it more that we'll just, obviously we just threw all this at you, you're kind of looking at it generally, your general knee-jerk reactions to this first analysis, and then kind of where you want to give input or as to just the general process, and also how the community meeting it will go, or clarify, you could add or amend what I'm saying. Just want to make sure so we could facilitate the best session for you all.
Yeah, what basically kind of triggered me into this was in the initial part of your presentation, you had, if I remember right, several kind of like questions type of things. How do we want to do this? What do we want to see? Blah, 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 blah. And to me, it would kind of behoove the Planning Commission to get together, and pardon me just a minute, I'm going to go on mute and cough. Yeah, darn COPD.
You want to share the droplets or whatever they call it? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so anyway, to me, it would kind of behoove us on the planning commission to get together and at least shotgun, brainstorm, whatever, some of our thoughts on that initial part of your presentation material. For example, the administrative elements, I think you're probably going to get a lot of people shaking their head up and down where, yeah, we think there's probably some administrative items that we could probably take care of.
Right.
How big, how wieldy do we want to make this thing? For example, we have a hillside overlay right now. That hillside overlay probably covers 95% of the town. Do we want to incorporate what's in that hillside overlay and maybe think about doing things differently, either based upon lot size, or something else we could look at is we could do things differently based upon the slope of the ground. We could have different setbacks based upon how steep it is. So there's different brainstorming type of things I think it'd be good for this group to maybe go through. Does that help?
Yeah. So more, yes, yes, definitely. Because it's more, like you said, those like the original initial reactions to what you guys have seen in the code versus when we get to the nitty gritty, that's not, each section that we propose, that's further meetings, but it is good to frame what we're looking at, starting with that conversation. And I'm be there mostly to listen and take in those, like you said, shotgun thoughts and reactions as to what you all know from your work and volunteering with this commission as to what you see are the general items, and making sure we don't miss anything as we look at it. And then also, like you said, that'll help give structure to the community meeting when we're just saying, taking input. I think does have to be a little more structured, and it will help for us when we have that community meeting will be after the survey. So we'll already have that as well. So yes, I do. I think I just want to make sure we're on the same page. And I think that's very important and a good idea.
Okay. Julia, you look like you're about ready to say something.
I'm looking at calendars, and so this is rather off the cuff. I'm trying to figure out if this meeting suggested on the 23rd, if we will have the time to prepare for it, or if Nina, the 13th of April, I'm hearing that the commission wants some time to digest and make suggestions. I just want to make sure that we have information for them so that they're able to have a productive meeting.
Yeah, Julia, this initial meeting, brainstorming might not need as much, because basically it's, at least what I'm hoping for is the commissioners get together and just shotgun ideas. It may be a little logistically challenging in the Zoom environment. We may have to kind of scratch our heads a little bit about how we actually accomplish that. And I think there's things we can do and tools available. But, again, my experience is in the face-to-face environment with yellow stickies. So
I think if I'm understanding correctly, it's more if the planning commission feels they have time, because I feel for me, I'm not going to have much more prepared than I had today. It's more, I think maybe it sounds, I do know maybe certain slides that help with, like you said, with those questions. I think that slide and those 6 recommendations will start the conversation. Maybe we'll put like an outline up to start the conversation. But for me, I'm gonna, it's like you said, brainstorming initial knee-jerk reactions for me, or things that you guys have been probably listing somewhere for years in your notebook. It's just me taking that in, if that's, and I think that's what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of preparation required by anybody other than again, this is not a unwieldy group to manage. Everybody's not real chatty. We don't have somebody that we have trouble, they monopolize the conversation. I see this as an easy process with this group.
And I think I can take some of the questions and points and put it into a 1-pager that I could have Julia email around to everyone. And again, just to start the conversation, to remind, I know you have the PowerPoint, but I think I think that might help. And again, it would just be seen as a more casual outline to start the, again, not start because you all have been thinking about this for years, but to start, you know, to give ideas for different topics. That's pretty simple. And I'm glad we clarified that because, you know, at first I was like, oh, but these other steps will be later on, but that's not what we're doing. We're just taking in that original input, and you just got, you know, saw this PowerPoint tonight. So I understand that's important.
I think this is an excellent opportunity for Mr. Zachary Trainer to get in there and help facilitate the discussion.
So just what came to my mind as far as brainstorming was breakout groups. So if you have a lot of people, you could, you know, break off into several rooms and then generate maybe like the top couple ideas out of each room and kind of bring that back to a larger discussion. That's just kind of where my thought process was at for the meeting here.
But we're not a very large group.
Yeah, I think we're
This is the breakout group.
Okay, fair enough.
I think we're
That would
gonna,
be good for the community input, perhaps, Zach. And if you would
Yep.
be, I guess maybe research if we could do that. I guess we could, we figure out technologically, but and that's coming up soon. So yeah, that's helpful. The community input meeting, I think it's, well, whatever date we had, I think April 27th.
That's
March.
April 27th.
Yeah.
After the survey closes.
okay. Do we have any more questions or comments? Everyone other than Paul potentially okay for March 23rd?
Yeah.
Gonna brainstorm and maybe give these folks some of our thoughts.
Good idea.
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay, good deal. Julia, let's try to do that. And I would actually, I'm kind of thinking we might want to at least invite the Board of Trustees. I mean, if this is a working session, they may want to participate as well.
Half of them are here in the meeting.
Yeah, Catherine's here. She's up next with our next agenda item. So if there's no other questions or comments, Nina, thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice meeting
Zach,
everyone
thank you very
virtually.
much as well. And we will go ahead and proceed on with Catherine. Catherine, you're on.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, it's just reviewing the capital improvements program within the 2019 comp plan. And I just thought I would add some more information about where we are, and that includes some of the details of the CDBG grant. We have obtained a PPRTA grant to help with the storm water drainage that will help with the lake water quality. And that's really important, not just for the health of the lake, but to do the improvements that we want to that we included in the CDBG grant, which is to reinforce the walls. That also includes reconfiguring the outlet and flood control, adding the ADA fishing pier, upgrading the playground. Those things are all part of the capital improvements program. And so it's really nice that we have those things that are dovetailing, because we really need to have both that those stilling basins so that we so that the work we do on the lake can actually be preserved. And then we've got the RFP out for for managed parking. And that also has the potential of addressing some of the signage issues, like the Wayfair signage, information about businesses and trails, and a lot of things have the potential of coming together within that project. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the kinds of proposals that we'll be receiving there, and I'm sure that the Planning Commission will be interested in those as well. I don't know if you have any questions. I've certainly been thinking about a joint session that the Planning Commission, I think it was the Planning Commission initiated that request. And I know, Todd, you've asked me about that, and I don't really know how to time it. I guess I sort of feel like we've got, one project after another, and but perhaps, the rewriting the code might be something that we could get together on. Maybe
Yeah,
we can.
That's why I
combine
really
those.
wanted to have an invite go out to the Board of Trustees, because that could kind of help get some interaction going, especially for this initial brainstorming where we're just kind of basically, I call it shotgunning. We're kind of shotgunning some ideas back at folks and trying to get the groupings going. So yeah, it could be good. But I would like to at least extend the invitation to the Board of Trustees.
Yes, I think that's a good idea. And even if it's not the whole board, I'm sure. And at some point, we'll have a more formalized get together.
Yeah, it's awful easy for things to kind of, with everyone's schedules and whatnot, trying to get everything to mix together, trying to get a larger group of people together and trying to make it meaningful for both groups. It can be a challenge. I know, I've been there, I've done it. So
well, I'm really happy with all the work that the Planning Commission is doing. I feel like there's a lot being accomplished on several fronts, but we still have a huge to-do list. So it doesn't necessarily feel like we've got, room to breathe, or, a good chunk of time when we can get together. We've been talking about having like a grants workshop for months too. And
yeah,
I think we're no less interested in doing that. It's just, it's
trying to get all the schedules to align.
Get it all scheduled and prioritized, and
it can be a
so
challenge.
thanks for your understanding.
Yep.
Any
Okay.
questions for me?
Commissioner.
Well, thanks everybody for your time.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Catherine, for coming in and speaking with us. And we will go on and move
Thank
into
you,
our
Catherine.
housekeeping item. And did I hear someone try to chime in?
I said thank you, Catherine.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks again, Catherine. So our next item up is our housekeeping and announcements. Do we have any announcements anyone would like to make, or any housekeeping items? I always appreciate feedback for how the meetings are going. If there's areas for improvement, please let me know. That'd be a good, yeah, if anyone's got any comments on that, I appreciate it.
There's no room for improvement. You do an excellent job.
Oh, thank you. There's always room for improvement. Okay, if there's no other housekeeping and announcement items, it is 7:59 and we will go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everyone. And we will likely see at least some of you on March 23rd.
Will it be at 7:30? I mean, at 6:30, Todd, the meeting?
We could probably get with the folks who are available to be there and try to get the most appropriate time. We may, 6:30 is kind of our typical time. That's probably what I target initially. But if folks want to see if folks can move it up, I'd be open to seeing if we can move it up. So we'll have to work the scheduling. So with that, thanks everyone. Good meeting.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.